This is a forge welded overlay. That's a 3/16 round rod forge welded onto a piece of 1/4 by 2 mild steel. And then to show that it's actually welded on there, I've bent it and everything is still stuck together. Okay, so the first technique, we'll use a piece of 1/4 by 2 mild steel and a piece of 3/16 inch round stock. So it doesn't take very long to heat this stuff up. Little stuff. And we're not really going to change the shape much. I am going to put a little bit of a taper, but more like a flat taper on there. And I'll start coiling it up. It's a little bit cold to go where I want it to. All right, so yeah, it does not take long for these things to get hot. I just move that little scroll around to where I need to tighten it up. So not anything complicated. That's the one side. Now I'm going to cut this off and scroll the other side. Whatever you've got, tongs, vice grips, whatever it is. If it works for you, that's good. Alright, I'll come over here, cut it most of the way through, grab it on the back, twist it off. Take the hardy out so you don't hurt yourself. Put a little bit of taper on there just in one dimension. And I can even start it. And again, for this demonstration, I'm not doing anything terribly fine or detailed. That's kind of not the point of this technique. That pair of tongs to grab it out of the fire. I know, I shouldn't play around with it too much. Alright, so we have kind of a design. More importantly, it fits on top of our piece of steel. I'm going to cool this off. water, and we'll do the next little bit on the vise. Yeah, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this little scroll and put it down where I want it on my 1/4 by 2. And I'm going to use my magic yellow pencil. What do you mean you don't have magic yellow pencils? Well, you just have to do with what kind of pencils you've got. I haven't done the whole outline. I'm just putting a double, an inside and outside line along the main shaft. And then I have this tool, which is just a diamond point chisel. And inside between those two lines, I'm going to raise up a couple of good-sized burrs. Yep, I think 3 of them might work. And I'll see if they're, yes, they're going to go along in there. Now, I know it's kind of hard to see, but those burrs, I'll take it out of the vise so you can see better. Those burrs stand up maybe a 1/16 of an inch, and they're inside the line. And all that's going to do when I put the heated scroll on there and drive it down is those will clinch in there and they will hold that in place until it can be welded. So the next part is to heat up the scroll and use my friend the flatter. We'll actually drive it down on there. If you tried to do that cold, all you'd really do is smash those little burrs down and they wouldn't do anything. If you put the scroll on hot, the metal's soft enough that those burrs will actually drive into the metal and bend over a little bit and clinch it in place. And again, this is not a whole lot of grab, it's just enough grab to hold it until you can weld it. Sometimes very hard to tell what temperature you're seeing because cameras don't really give you a good color match with what your eyes would tell you. I'm going to go for a bright orange, not quite yellow on this. I'm going to put it down right on top of those little things. And I'm going to take my flatter and hold it right there. Right. And if I did it right, you'll see it's now stuck in place. That is stuck where I wanted it to be stuck. Okay. Got to warm the whole thing up and flex it. So it's going in the fire. I'll tilt the camera up so you can see it's gone in the fire. So I'm going to heat this thing up. Get it to a nice even red and just put some 20 mule team borax from my cat's cat food can. Everybody should have a shop cat just so that they can have these nifty little cat food cans to use for their fluffs. If you don't have a shop cat, I'm sure you can find somebody who has a cat that will lend you some empty cat food cans. It's of course not quite as easy as getting magic pencils. put a little flux on it. And put it back in the fire, get it up to welding heat. Since this is a fairly long piece, I probably will have to do 2 or 3 light little welds to get that thing stuck together. Let's see. The point of this technique is not to smash the 2 pieces together as hard as you can. It's a delicate forge weld because you want to retain those little wires on top, that little rod on top as a decorative element. So all you're doing is gently tapping them together, because at welding temperatures, that little bar on top is very soft. And I'm also not sure whether my tacking technique will keep it in place. So I have to be very careful pulling it out of the fire that I don't shift that thing around. Anyway, let's see what we got here. All right, here we go. Alright, believe it or not, that's actually welded on there. I'm going to take a second weld because some of the bottom part of that, I'm not sure that I got to weld all the way across it. I've got to weld in the main body. So I'm going to weld down at the end of the spiral and then do a third weld up there. So now it's much firmer in its attachment, so I don't have to worry about it falling off. But just a couple of those burrs holding it together, at a welding heat, there's almost no strength in those burrs. There's just enough to hold them in position. If you brushed it with a wire brush or brushed the coke off, there's a good chance that you would actually knock that scroll off the surface. But now that it's hit its first little weld, even though that's only a partial weld over part of the surface, it will hold it much more firmly, and I don't have to be so delicate with it. But again, we're welding it just enough of a tap to make the 2 pieces of metal come in contact. You're not trying to smash the whole thing level. You're just tapping it enough to make the weld. Whoops, there we go. Ready for the second weld. Just very gently. Now you see all of that stuff down there is welded to the surface. I just have this part of the upper scroll that needs to be welded. So what do? We put a little more borax on it, and we'll weld the third section. Put it in the fire so that part gets hot. The Hopi Indian silversmiths do an overlay technique in sterling silver just by soldering layers together to get that same sort of relief effect. I don't know that I've ever seen it done in iron or steel. So if anybody knows of somebody else who's been doing this, I'd be glad to hear about it. Let's see what we can do. Just very gently, because at that temperature, that little rod has almost no strength at all. Okay, now that we've done that, we can get all that flux and ash off there. Do is let it get a little cooler, because the flux and ash was actually a little easier to get off at a lower temperature. Okay. Not looking too bad. I'll put it in there so I can get more of the flux off. I also sometimes quench them to blow the scale and flux off. But taking a heat just to brush it out works just as well. Use the big bristle brush here, the barbecue brush. Gets into the details a little easier. Okay. You can see it's nicely stuck on there now. And I am going to quench it, cool it off. part off. It's still hot too. But as you can see, it's welded onto the surface. The little burrs did jump sideways on me. There are the little burrs, but you can still see the relief and the fact that that is firmly attached. What I should do is show you that it is all welded together. I'm going to take a heat and actually bend it. Hey, here we go. And you can see I have bent that. Yeah, the heat is not letting you see that well. I'm going to let it cool off quietly here. Quenched it, and you can now see that it was stuck on there well enough that when I heated it again and bent it, everything is still attached